Conversation. I understand the temptation to be amidst a celebrity, but we have a very important conversation here today, and I'm very excited to moderate it as well. I'd like to begin by sort of positioning where we are at in this moment in time, where our civilization is at the crux of a big, jubilant celebration in terms of returning of Bhagwan Sri Rama to Ayodhya. While this is happening, amidst this jubilation and fanfare, unfortunately, we are pushed again to pause. Pause yesterday on the 19th of January to remember the genocide against Kashmiri Pandits that happened. Pushed to pause because when the Babri Masjid and the Ram Janmabhoomi agitation happened, it had a effect on the Bengali Hindus who lived in Bangladesh. While there is this celebration in Bharat, we still have a civilizational responsibility towards many, many Hindus across the world who continue to live in situations that are not accepting of their identity, accepting of their Hinduness. And today we are here to discuss one of those conversations that is often not, I interestingly learned that is not spoken about enough even in Bengal. So I'm just going to start very quickly with one thing that I learned in Shivam's book, that there's a lot of, everybody asks, like, why is West Bengal called West Bengal when it's in the eastern part of the country? Isn't that something that, have you ever thought about it? I truly have not, to be honest. I just always thought of it as West Bengal and forgot. It might be my lack of directional sense, but nevertheless, it carries a big weight because it reminds us that there are memories and horrors of partition that continue to impact that state. And it also reminds us that there is another population on the other side that we probably left behind. I want to get us started in terms of historical context setting with the senior most person of the panel, Jaideep sir. We're here today to discuss Bengali Hindus in Bharat as well as in Bangladesh. Tell us a little bit about what do you feel their present, their future looks like, and tie it to the historical context of both partition as well as the 1971 Liberation War.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Thank you very much, the organizers, for inviting me here. See, I'll go a little before, much before partition. And I'll say this, that Bengali Hindus as a community are actually the most persecuted community in this world. If we talk about Jews, they have faced the Holocaust. They have been persecuted, not only in Germany, but in other parts of the world. And that has more or less stopped persecution. But what Bengali Hindus have faced is, like other communities in India, Bengali Hindus have also faced a lot of persecution during the Mughals, when we were under foreign occupation. But as far as Bengali Hindus are concerned, this persecution still happens, continues today, not just in Bangladesh, but also in many other parts of India. If we consider this is a fact, it's a historical, we have data on it, that wherever Bengali Hindus have been there, including West Bengal, their numbers are declining every day. Even in West Bengal, the number of Bengali Hindus declines every day. The same is the case in Bangladesh, and same is the case in other pockets of Northeast India where Bengali Hindus have been present for generations.
And I want to talk a little bit about the numbers, Deep.
Well, data journalism is something we discuss quite often these days. If you look at the data, it's staggering. It's 7.9% according to the last census in Bangladesh. I'll specifically talk about Bangladesh. From the time it became an independent country in 1971 to now, the numbers have steadily gone down. So yes, and I have also mentioned this in my book, and it's talked about, there is a syncretic culture. There is semblance of a syncretic culture in modern day Bangladesh, but if you just look at how the numbers have steeply come down, it's a horror story. And it's something people need to talk about, and which is why I thought of writing the book in the first place. apart from the fact that, it's also the story of my parents, and we come from that side of the border. 46, 47, that's when both sides of my family, my father's and mother's family, they came to West Bengal, which is the western part of Bengal, which was the western part of Bengal. It continues to be called West Bengal, though Bangladesh now is a different country, but that was East Bengal, the eastern part of Bengal. So yes, I mean, it's like I said, it's a horror story, and it needs to be very closely monitored, because when Hindus decided to stay back in Bangladesh, not all of them left. There is still a 7.9% is still a high percent, though much lower than what it was. They thought of it as home, because there are temples in Bangladesh, they share the same language, pretty much the same culture. And to be othered in your own country is a story the world does not talk about. So which is why the need for a book like this.
Just to, this is a book that's also available. Deep's book is available at the Sapna Mukha stall, Being Hindu in Bangladesh. And one of the things that you speak about in the book is the nature of violence against Hindu is very cyclical. And it also gets triggered by different incidents across. I mentioned one of them. This exodus of the dwindling in numbers, can you throw some more light on what really constitutes that dwindling of numbers? Is it people leaving? Is it conversion?
It's both people leaving and conversions. In fact, there is a sizable, Jaideep would know, there's a sizable portion of well-to-do Bangladeshi Hindus who now have properties on this side of the border in our country. West Bengal, even in other places, because they say that a day might come when we have to leave this country all of a sudden, exactly like it happened during 1947 when families like our families, had to leave. So they don't talk about it, but they have bought land in the name of some relatives who perhaps stays on this side of the border, even in their names, they have properties here. So yes, there is violence which happens from time to time. There is also forced conversion, but I think there's this constant toning down of Hinduness that you witness once you're there.
Can you give us an example?
Like for instance, the way you greet, you don't say, in Bangla we say namaskar. Now they don't say that. Most of them say walaikum assalam, right? The Bengali word for water is jol, but they say pani. So it's little things when you go and stay there, because I stay there quite often. You subconsciously, they have started adopting to another way of life. And so if you pick up things like that, how long are you away from converting? Because gradually you realize that your upward mobility perhaps in society also depends on your faith. So it's not always by force. It's also something that's that sense of your Hindu-ness is ebbing away.
But while we speak about these different ways in which the Hindu-ness is ebbing away, Shivam has written very starkly about the brutal incidents that have taken place, especially against women. First of all, throw some light on what your experience was going there and having to uncover these stories.
So, unlike my experience was about this side of Bengal, the West Bengal. As you rightly said, we still call it West Bengal, but there was an attempt made a few years ago. The state government, the present state government, what they did is I think they moved, if I'm not wrong, they moved a resolution to name that state as Bangladesh. So at that point of time, I thought this is nothing else than toning down or telling people to forget about what happened. But it cannot be done because the partition is still continuing. So we had partition on two sides of a country, western and eastern. On western side of a country, partition happened, brutal things happened, people were killed, women were raped, but after some years, after a year or two, it stopped. But unfortunately, it did not stop at the eastern side of our country. So my experience while writing book was about the post-poll violence which happened in independent India, in a democratic India, where elections were held, where security forces were deployed, where people voted, and there around 70 people were killed only because they supported a particular political party. Hundreds of women were raped. Although in my book, I do not record the experiences of each one of them or their families, because the complaints or the FIRs which were registered about rapes and sexual harassment were only a few. Because the families thought at least they are alive. So they did not even had courage to report it. Even when forces from outside were coming to secure them, even when CBI was looking at, still they are not reporting it. Still I'm in contact with one or two persons who wanted to, even if there is, I'm a lawyer, so even if there is a delay in registering FIR, that doesn't mean that crime doesn't happen. So crime can be registered even at this point of time. I'm trying to convince them to register it, to file it, and write an application to CBI, because CBI is looking after these cases. But unfortunately, they do not have the courage. Why will they have courage? Because they were raped. There were mass rapes. Even there's one case, I won't mention this, it's famous by Dia rape case. So that particular girl was raped in front of her father. And then she even gave interview to Op India. I think it is there and still there on YouTube. Now they have entered into some kind of settlement. Yeah. Even there is all the facts are there in open. There is an interview on YouTube, but still she was forced to enter into settlement, because if she will not enter, then her family will be killed. Her houses will be destroyed. So this is
No, I immediately, so sorry for pointing the question on Bangladesh to you when you've written about, West Bengal, but it kind of brings to me the thought to me that the situation across the international border doesn't seem to be as uniquely different for Bengali Hindus. And I think Jaideep Das spoke about this, that Bengali Hindus are possibly the most persecuted, community, not just in a country like Bangladesh, but also in certain states in India. I'd love for you to speak about that.
In Bangladesh, it's religious persecution, but in other parts of, say, Northeast, I mean, there are 3-4 generations of Bengalis who have been living in the Northeast. Like one part of my family is from there. So there it's more of linguistic, the other, and the use of pejorative words. Like, say, I grew up in Shillong, and I was constantly referred to as a Dakhar, which means a non-tribal. And that is, they don't pronounce the word, they spit out the word. And there, I grew up when I was a child, I grew up feeling like a second-class citizen. And this feeling is there amongst all Bengalis, except West Bengal, and also in some parts of West Bengal in the borders. This feeling is there amongst all Bengali Hindus across, say, Bangladesh in the Northeast, and even largely in parts of Assam.
So why is this not a big topic of conversation? Why is this not, you see the Kashmiri Pandit community, of course it's not something that had been a huge topic of conversation for many years, but that conversation has risen, and you think that with the awareness that exists today, is this something that you could discuss in your communities? How has your book been received, Deep?
It's funny, but my books are received better in Delhi than they are in Bengal. Though all of my books are about Bengal. So my first book, Blood Island, second book, Bengal 2021, on the 2021 Assembly election and being in Bangladesh, all of them receive, I would say, more than decent coverage and also sort of critical acclaim in Delhi and even some other places. But in Bengal, there is this, there is complete silence, as if those books have not come out. So in fact, sometimes when the book fair happens, I have to go and check whether the publisher has kept the books in a Kolkata book fair, because there is threat of violence. It's a fact. I mean, it's the same country, but you can't sort of keep a book there, because in fact it happened with Blood Island. Some people came and from the HarperCollins stall, they approached, and nobody knew who those people are, saying this book can't be here.
It's a very strange and very interesting thing as to why it's never talked about in West Bengal. You know, even people from families which have fled across the border,
Yeah.
their women folk have suffered, you know, in say in Bangladesh or what was East Pakistan earlier. They have some, but when at the moment they come into West Bengal, it's as if they try to deny what is, you know, there's a feeling of denial. Number two is the political culture in West Bengal. 34 years of communist rule and the last 12 years now of ultra-communist rule. That has, you know, made the wokeism and the sort of a denial and you know, it's intentionally brushed under the carpet because of, you know, to conform to so-called secularism. This is the problem in West Bengal.
And also, I will just add to his point. I think there are two reasons. It is not just about is it working?
Yeah.
It is also about Indians, rest of the Indians talking about it. See, I grew up I'm from Madhya Pradesh, central part of the country. I grew up there. So whenever when I was in my teenage and whenever I used to hear about partition, I used to think that partition only in the western part of the country. So our Delhi centricity of our thoughts, of our media, of our governance has done injustice to the Bengali Hindus. That's why we are not talking about it. Since the rest of the country is not talking, yes, there is, as he said, even Bengali Hindus on this side of the border are not talking about them. This is the reason. But see, for Kashmiri Pandits, rest of the country is talking.
Yeah.
But for why we are not talking about Bengali Hindus? Every year, hundreds of temples are destroyed. People are persecuted. Women are raped. But still, we are not talking about it. So it is very unfortunate. So there are.
No, absolutely. I think very rightly said that our memories of partition get relegated to the western border and therefore so much of it gets missed out. And just to, you know, in Mangaluru we are talking about it today. And we will continue to talk about it because the books that have been referred here are very much at this stall. And really kudos to the organizers for picking up a topic that needs to be spoken about more. It takes guts to do that. Just coming back to you, Deep, in the Pakistani societal milieu, right? Everybody has seen the recent Bangladesh election results that came out where Sheikh Hasina won the election. And I think one of the things that we can learn from Deep is just how that political positioning of Sheikh Hasina with Prime Minister Modi and the good relationship that exists. Does that mean that Bangladeshis and Indians are on the same page about multiple issues, or especially about Hindus that live in Bangladesh? Or can you give us a little bit more depth on that front, on the political perspective vis-a-vis the societal perspective?
So I think it's very interesting. So on the face of it, there's great bonhomie. You know, you saw during G20, the photo ops were great. In fact, Prime Minister Modi even went to 2021. Prime Minister Modi went to Bangladesh, and you know there were a lot of protests, and Hasina made sure that that his travel was smooth, which it was. Hasina is welcomed every time she comes to Delhi. But you have to realize that 15 years of uninterrupted power in Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina's, right? There is huge anti-incumbency against her. In fact, this polls, and I have also been a little critical about the election, this poll in Bangladesh has been dismissed by most of the Western press. Now, I won't go to the extent of dismissing it, but I'll definitely say that not all was okay in the way the polls were conducted. So I think Sheikh Hasina is not as popular in Bangladeshi, among the Bangladeshi voting public as it would seem from her long reign in power. Having said that, I think the strategic partnership between Delhi and Dhaka does not necessarily percolate to the civil society. So I think the lived experience of a Bangladeshi Hindu is very different. For instance, they're called all kinds of names in their daily living. I mean, we talk about these issues when you see news headlines like, you know, temples are attacked, or, you know, priests are killed, or, you know, people are killed in riots. But the daily lived experience of a Bangladeshi Hindu, whether it's in Dhaka or outside, for instance, from a colleague in office or a fellow student at the university, very casually somebody may refer to a Bangladeshi Hindu as an Indian or as a raw agent, you know. There is a term you'd know, sir, the Malayun, which is a pejorative term for Hindus. You know, there is a constant sort of othering that's happening very casually. It's not often, violence is not physical, you know, there's a lot of psychological violence in the civil society. That does not somehow get reflected when you see these photo ops between Modi and Hasina. So the government to government interactions are great, then they should be there. But I think the civil society, what's happening in it is a completely different matter.
And, you know, often in conversations these days, Bangladesh is called our only friendly neighbor in South Asia. And economically, we've seen growth with, you know, within this leadership. But where the country is headed in terms of its society, whether the other parties that exist, whether they're electorally active right now or not, say Jamaat or BNP, what is the standing that they have? How do they perceive Hindus in Bangladesh?
See, Jamaat has been barred by the courts from contesting elections. The largest opposition party, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, they have boycotted this poll, saying that they are hacked anyway. Jamaat and BNP officially right now they are not together, but you know their protests from October till December they ran simultaneous protests against the Sheikh Hasina government on the streets, which led to some killings also. And a day before election, a train was burnt in Dhaka. 5 people were burnt alive. Now, Jamaat's stated aim, and they have come on record saying this, is a Sharia law for Bangladeshi society. So where does that leave Hindus in Bangladesh? It's a stated aim. They have said it, that enough with man-made laws, we want Sharia law in Bangladesh now. And Jamaat is very popular. So electorally, they may have been kept out. They're extremely popular.
So we potentially see a day where Jamaat could be in government, and if the
I mean, it's a
speculation.
question you should, yeah, but you can't rule, definitely you can't rule that out.
I want to.
If not Jamaat,
Yeah.
it could be the Awami League overtaken by the Jamaat, which is in power.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, they have been infiltrated. Awami League is not the
Very
Awami
interesting.
League of
Yeah.
1971, etc.
Right.
And coming, just one
Sure,
small
please.
point out here, even elections are an excuse to attack Hindus in Bangladesh.
Yes.
Just immediately after elections, this time fortunately, we will say just one person was killed and a few dozen houses were burnt and a few temples were destroyed. Why? Okay, those Hindus who voted for Awami League, why did you vote for Awami League? Those who didn't vote, that means you responded to the BNP's call to boycott the elections. So anyway, you're going to be attacked.
The ballot bullet in blood across the border, that's what we see. Jaideep sir, I want to ask you, are we not the Indians who helped liberate Bangladesh?
Yeah.
Are the Hindus not the community that is probably one of the biggest reasons for Bangladesh's existence? Is that not a memory that exists anymore for young Bangladeshis, for those who are asking for violence or talking about against Hindus?
This memory is, I think, confined to Dhaka, to some liberals or a few hundred liberals in Dhaka. What matters much more now to the Bangladeshi in the hinterland or in large parts of the country is more of the Muslim identity. And there, they are not on, they don't consider the Hindus to be their equal partners in the country. So the Hindus are different. It's more religious now.
But is that, has that memory faded from, you know, wasn't there a strong anti-Pakistan sentiment, therefore a
There's a
pro-India?
huge anti-Pakistan sentiment. I'm not very sure how much of it remains now, because one of the reasons for Hasina's unpopularity in Bangladesh is also her supposed closeness to India. That makes her very, very unpopular in Bangladesh. In fact, one of the slogans, pre-election slogans in Bangladesh, and it was a real Facebook Insta reel that was forwarded lots of times, was Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Sheikh Hasina Baper Naam. As in Hare Krishna, Hare Ram is Sheikh Hasina's father's name. This was what her political opponents were saying on the streets, and there are hundreds of people chanting this slogan against Hasina. So the fact that Hasina is close to Modi, supposedly close to Modi, pro-India, During Durga Puja, she visits some temples. All these are played up against her during elections and otherwise.
So there is that.
So what you asked, 71 is very, I mean, for the current generation, there's a lot of anti-Indian. It's also, it's not, in certain circles in Dhaka, I would say it's not just religious. There is also a sense of India being the big brother. You know, the fact that they think that India can hack a Bangladesh election, national election, is something that does not go down well with a chunk of the civil society. They think that India is telling us how to be. So what you ask that, you know, did India not liberate them? So I think that sense now works in a different way. So for that generation, yes, thanks to India, East Pakistan became Bangladesh. For the current generation, it's like, okay, you did it, but you can't constantly tell us how to be. And Modi is constantly telling Hasina how to run her country in a sense. Though that's not, I mean, it's a sovereign country, I'm sure that's not what happens, but there is a certain degree of Indian influence that's there in Bangladesh, which does not go down well with many Bangladeshis.
Shivam, I want to.
Adding to this, so recently I was in Japan, so there was some delegates from Bangladesh also. So I was talking to one of them, and that delegation's timing collided with Vijay Diwas, that is 16th of December. So that they were very happy, and we were tracking. And while talking, he told me that we got liberation and other things he told me. And he knew who I am, and we were also discussing, he knew where my inclinations are. Still, never in his conversation about the liberation thing, about the Vijay Divas, he did not mention our contribution. And he was around 27, 28 years age. So that shows what Dada is telling, that shows the mentality of the current generation, how much they have forgotten about our contribution to their freedom, which they are enjoying now.
And they are also peddling another narrative, you know, over the past, say, maybe a decade or so, that it was actually not so much the Indian army, but mostly their Mufti Jodhas, their guerrillas who won the war for them. Not so much the Indian army. The Indian army came and took all the credit, but it was actually they who fought against the Pakistani army, which is again false, absolutely false. They couldn't have done it on their own with their muskets and swords and sticks.
Ragtag sort of, you know, army that was just put together. They couldn't have possibly won the war for their own independence, but yeah.
And Deep, you were also talking about the viciousness with which Pakistan treated Bangladesh through that entire war.
Unbelievable, because not just Hindus, even Muslims, there's this term that was used, selective genocide. So what happened to I don't want to dwell on that too much, but I think there were degrees of rapes that happened. So if a Hindu East Pakistani, it was still East Pakistan, was picked up by the West Pakistani army, the way she was raped was different from the way a Muslim East Pakistani was raped. Okay, so there were degrees of violence. There's a filmmaker, forgetting his name, he also did a film on this. It didn't do too well. He had long years of research on the rape camps that West Pakistani army put up in East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. And but yeah, I mean, the Muslims suffered in huge numbers. They were killed, raped, maimed. But somehow that sense of what happened to them generations ago is ebbing.
You should mention the numbers.
Yeah, number?
Deaths and rapes. I mean, please mention the numbers.
You should talk about...
a few lakh
yeah,
men?
a couple of lakhs.
Raped.
Couple of rapes.
Okay, 10 lakh killed, and about a lakh or so forcibly converted to Islam. So these are the figures we're talking about. Okay, they're not just say 10, 20, 15.
In terms of numbers are contested, but in terms of sheer, I mean, I think this is the worst. What happened in 71, that period, nothing like that happened anywhere in the world.
In the world, yeah. And even when I had been to Dhaka and I interviewed people, you know, even when the country was just about to be born and Pakistani army knew they would have to surrender, you know, just even 2 days before that, they went and the Pakistani army, along with their Razakars and the collaborators, they went to the houses of doctors, engineers, academics, intellectuals. They picked them up and they simply massacred them, so that a new nation they knew would be born, but it would be born without any brains, without the elite. That was how vicious Pakistan was and still is, by the way.
Since you mentioned Razakars were, worked hand in hand with the West Pakistani army to crush down the revolt that was rising from the ground against West Pakistan. Incidentally, the vice president of the Jamaat, a man called Dilwar Hussain Saidi, he died last year, I think October. And the outpouring of public grief, he's a war criminal. He's a war criminal. The Bangladeshi court had sent him to jail. And he was in hospital, he was unwell, and he died. And the outpouring of, there was a picture that was put out that of the moon with Dilwar Hussain Saidi's face on it, of course Photoshop, and that was circulated thousands of times, and it's like, you can see his face on the moon. This is the original picture. And the outpouring of public, police had to open fire at his funeral procession.
And also, at that time, what I think is, Bengali identity overpowered the Muslim identity, but now it is reversing. Only
Why?
5 decades. Arabization of Bangladeshi Muslims. So now it is like Muslim identity overpowering the
Deep
Bangla
has
identity.
brought this out in his book very well. Bangladesh is actually a very, very, very poor country, and to escape poverty, it's the fundamentalists. They turn to religion and the radical form of Islam, Salafi Islam. These Salafis, they have funded thousands of madrasas all over the country, and it is there that the radicalization happens. It also doesn't help that Sheikh Hasina now gives equal, cognizance to a degree from madrasa as a general education, as an MA or a undergrad degree or a graduate degree.
No, I like that you brought out that point, Shivam, that the Muslim identity has overpowered the Bengali identity. I'd just like to sort of contextualize that with, the geopolitical situation and the rise of, India's own, Bharat's own civilizational identity as well. Does that, what sort of world do you foresee for Hindus in Bangladesh as well as, and we can come back to your own work on how does that impact West Bengal's political tapestry, and do you see that being impacted by more narratives that will be a lot more sympathetic to the Hindus who, as Deep said, Sanjeev Sanyal said, which is the Hindus who have been left behind in Bangladesh?
What I think is, I cannot tell anything about future, but seeing what we are seeing today in India, we are having in North India, almost all the ancient temples were destroyed. We were persecuted. We used to rebuild the temples, then it was again used to be destroyed. People were forced to, they were converted, they were killed, women were raped. But see, after around 500 years, we are back again. We are fighting. We have a temple which will survive for more than 1,000 years. So this is how we have survived, and we are now rising again, especially in northern part of India. So that's why looking at this trend, I'm very hopeful. But looking at the current situation there, and looking at the practicality of which we all are talking about, I'm not that hopeful.
Bengal, specifically West Bengal, I mean.
If you talk about West Bengal, here, see, what communists did and what they are doing is, they are trying to tone down the Hindu identity by bringing up the Bengali identity. This is what they are doing in West Bengal. And unfortunately, people are getting plate in their hands. But situation is very grim, especially in the border areas. When you go to Malda, Murshidabad, in Malda, when I was traveling in West Bengal and I went to meet some victims there. So in Malda, just 8 kilometers from the border, there's an area where international arms dealing goes on. And this is very open. One of the BJP member there, I met them. He told me, even I can take you there. So such is the situation, just 8 kilometers away from the border. And that's why that 50 kilometers, the jurisdiction of BSF was increased by the central government. That is the same reason. So such is the situation in our own part of Bengal. So even in Kolkata, the place where in 1946 the Great Calcutta Killings happened, the place from where it originated it still has the potential to carry out more such killings. I was there. It was my first day in West Bengal. I went to took darshan of Makali, and when I was returning, I took this bus. The bus which used to run, the kind of bus which we used to see in Madhya Pradesh 20 years back, they are still there in Kolkata. So I was there, I was sitting there. I had this kalava in my hand. I just sat like this, and elderly man with beard and no mustaches was sitting just in front of me. When he saw that I was sitting like this, he asked me to put my legs down. I swiftly did it. I thought he might not like it, but then he told me, he saw this, he saw tilak here, and he recognized me that I was talking to the bus conductor. He recognized that I'm not a Bengali, I'm speaking Hindi. Then he came close to me. He said, "यहाँ हैं, तो यहाँ के तौर तरीके से रहो." He said this in Hindustani. I'm deliberately using the word Hindustani. This was my first day in Kolkata. It was, I think, 13th of November 2021. So such is the situation. 2020. This was my first day in Kolkata, and this is what I faced. And from that day, I got alarmed. I have to behave here because this is in Kolkata, capital city of the West Bengal. I cannot keep my legs like this.
And I think it's a commentary, and this anecdotal incident possibly is a commentary on the priorities, as Shivam sort of emphasized on, which I would say in Bengal, the highlighting of the Bengali identity vis-a-vis the Hindu identity, and this, whereas in Bangladesh, the Islamic identity sort of coming to the fore. There are multiple political incentives for that to happen as well. And I just want to sort of tie this conversation to that end, which is that there has been a lot of conversation here in Mangaluru as well on deaths of Karyakartas who have been associated with certain political party, elections not being, so brutal. We are bordered with Kerala, and therefore there are districts where that is a lived reality as well. It seems like the political fight is the next 20 years that we need to highlight and fight on. That in Bengal at least, where we have that sort of power and so. But in Bangladesh, is there anything we can do as the international community, as the Indian community? What is it that people here who have the inclination to help, what is it that we can even do? Because like I spoke about, the Kashmiri Pandit story has now become a lot more common to talk about. The international, like waiting for Amnesty International to take, actually that's more dangerous than anything else, but waiting for the West to take notice is definitely outside the purview of our interest. What is it that we as Indians can do to help Hindus in Bangladesh?
I think talk more about it, have more such sessions, have spread awareness about it, write books about it, and bring it into public consciousness. I think that is the only way that we can save Hindus in Bangladesh. Otherwise, in 30 years' time, there'll be no Hindus left in Bangladesh, according to the statistics. If you look at how the migration from that country.
Mm-hmm. Do we bring them home? How does that feel if I were to say that to a Bangladeshi young Hindu? Why have you chosen to live here?
Depends on who you ask, because I have asked this question. There are people who still say, no, this is home. So it's not necessarily that everybody wants to come home. So they still think that that's what they chose, and there is still hope. Having said that, I'll add perhaps one more point to what Jaideep was saying. I think religious tourism needs to increase in Bangladesh. There's a plethora of ancient Hindu temples, not just in Dhaka. In fact, not in Dhaka, outside Dhaka, there are Shakti Peeths. I think Hindus in large number, not just from West Bengal, I don't know how many Bengalis from West Bengal will go there, but from other parts of the country, please find out. The government is encouraging, go and visit those temples, offer puja, and if I feel that sometimes capitalism solves a lot of problems, if religious tourism revives local economies, I think there will be a sense that these things need to be protected. These traditions also need to be protected. Having said that, syncretism I was talking about briefly. There is a Muslim YouTuber who's very popular in Bangladesh, Salahuddin Suman. He does his videos in Bangla, but he actually documents Hindu heritage and history, and he talks about the Hindu temples. And if you look at them, you'll be astonished. Like I, for one, I didn't know that those kind of temples exist in Bangladesh. So I think there should be a lot of religious tourism.
At the risk of quoting controversy, I think when we say Akhand Bharat, I don't believe our responsibility and our duty lies only in conquest or boundaries per se. But the fact that there are people from our civilizational ancestry who are suffering and who require help, one. And second, as you rightly pointed out so beautifully, that dharmic architecture, dharmic essence continues to live in all of these. It's our duty to protect. So with this, I'll just very quickly open up for questions. We'll take 3 questions, 3 panelists, and all of them together, and then get them to answer it. Do we need the mic from the stage? You can take mine.
Thanks for sharing the certain stark realities, what's happening in Bangladesh, which is not appearing in any mainstream media. My question to all you 3 gentlemen, this radicalization of Islam in Bangla, how you compare that with what's happening in Western Asia, specifically with respect to Sunnis and IS? Are they interlinked with these forces, or is it a very independent phenomena and the fanatism is increasing over there? My question, why I'm thinking, is it like some kind of a pan-Islamic phenomena continuing in Bangladesh, or it is unique to Bangladesh?
Got it.
That is the point.
Yeah, we'll take the 3 questions together.
So my question is, what is happening in Bangladesh is also happening in states like West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, etc. Recently, Sri Annamalai case was stopped entering a church when he was doing his Padayatra, and when he quoted the Indian Constitution rights, and when he entered, a FIR was filed against Annamalai for entering the church. It would have been FIR should be filed against those who stopped him, but it was vice versa. In a state like West Bengal, Tamil Nadu and all, IPC means their own law. It's not Indian Penal Code. It's something hence.
Can we get to the question?
Now, in this situation, how we can, being a Hindu, how we can reach out the authority? Supreme Court is only focused on Manipur.
There was a question here, just for diversity of space. Sorry.
Hi. Actually, this question is for all of you, as well as people, a point to ponder for everybody. It will be a little bit long, but I'll be very fast. Okay. Because I wrote it down.
Sure.
See, as we all know, right now, Hindu mesia is at all-time high across US, UK, you go anywhere. This problem is there. And these attacks on Hindus by a particular community has been there in a similar manner since centuries. It's not new. This is all happening everywhere all the time, because I have been following these things for quite some time. Okay, my understanding is that neither government agencies nor political parties nor Hindus from other parts of India will come to help, how much ever we Hindus cry, like wherever there is a problem. So don't you think that it is high time that Hindus from West Bengal or Bangladesh should learn to protect themselves or get out of Bangladesh? Because you don't feel safe. When you don't feel safe, I don't think you can live there.
I think he's also kind of addressed that question to a great extent.
Yeah, and the last point, okay, self-preservation is above all. That's what I feel. So
Got it.
how do you feel about
Sure.
it? Thank
I
you.
think we'll just take one last question. Shama ma'am, I saw your hand up. Just make sure that there's equal representation, 2 women, 2 men.
Thank you. Okay, with the Naya Bharat and the bettered international relations, do you think the Bangladeshi Hindus stand a chance in the ICC?
That's great. Okay, so we'll answer whichever you want to answer together, and if a question has already been addressed, that's okay.
One thing which is not part of the, which is not exactly what you asked me, but I think one thing that I want to say is that what's happening in the West is also happening here in this part of the world. I think specifically America is playing very weird game in Bangladesh. So America is talking to forces that are inimical to democracy, right? America and the American ambassador, Peter D. Haas, he has been speaking to the BNP and also to members of the Jamaat, which is very weird because it is one thing to enforce democracy, I mean more more robust democracy in our country. It's quite another to talk to forces that are completely inimical to the very idea of democracy and secularism and somehow empower them. So I think what's happening in the West is not what's happening in Bangladesh. I think it's not just strains of Islam that are the problem there. Like I said, it's also a sense of India hacking into Bangladeshi elections or deciding what will happen to Bangladesh. That is also somehow creating a problem not just for Hindus in Bangladesh, but also the rise in anti-India sentiment in Bangladesh, you know, the big brotherly attitude. So that would be simplistic to say, though that's a very major point, that it's religiosity. It's not just religiosity. There is also, yes, there is also the kind of Islam. For instance, in Dhaka, I often hear this, that if Jamaat were to come to power, forget Hindus in Bangladesh, what kind of Muslim I am in Bangladesh will also be dependent on them. They will decide my Islam for me. This is something that some of the Muslims I speak to in Dhaka tell me often, that Hindus, though, you know, that's far away, but even for us, because it's not, they don't necessarily cater to the stereotype we have in India. Of course, you see, I have gone to Dhaka when as a young man, because my father used to go there as a visiting professor to Dhaka University, and the Dhaka I saw is not the Dhaka I see today. There is a sharp rise in the change in clothing, more burqas on the streets, etc., etc. Having said that, there are also spaces which are quote unquote very liberal, not socially conservative at all in the Muslim community. They tell me that, boss, if Jamaat were to come to power, and not just Jamaat, you know, there are these things called Waj Mehfils, which are basically religious gatherings where a religious preacher is going to, mostly in villages. So they tell you everything from how the woman in the house should behave to what she should wear to how, whether or not the Hindu should be around at all. And the fact that those Muslims who are attending Hindu festivals, they're doing a great harm to their religion. So they're telling you so, and those are extremely popular gatherings. Thousands of people attend them. Those are videotaped and then, you know, spread across social media. So I think there are multiple reasons why it's happening, not just radicalization. It's also radicalization, sense of India as a big brother, which doesn't go down well in civil society. So a lot of that, yes.
Coming to your question, what do the Hindus out there do? I mean, if they are facing attacks, the best thing for them is to come away. You know, I don't know, I mean, try saying that to a person who has, you know, who's rooted to that, whose forefathers have stayed there. It's his land, it's his country, you know, it's his house. How does he suddenly leave all that and come away? I mean, it's extremely traumatic for, I mean, perhaps many of them would prefer death to coming away, you know, to India. It doesn't work that way, really. That is a sad part of it.
To the question which was asked about IPC and judiciary involved, whatever happened in West Bengal, it was Calcutta High Court which stepped in. It was after the judgment of Calcutta High Court that CBI was called in. It was after the judgment of Calcutta High Court and those esteemed judges who interfered in it that violence stopped for some bit in some parts, especially in the urban areas, but it did not stop in rural areas. So there is even about the false cases. So I was part of ABVP when I was in West Bengal. So we were running a campaign, vote for better education. So we were going through a area which was Muslim, which had domination Muslims. They stopped us just because they saw the flag of ABVP. And me and one of my colleague, we were beaten. Then I just went to the police station and I complained about it. He said, the station house officer, SHO, clearly told me that I will write down your complaint, but you are trying to start a riots there. This is what he told me.
Absolutely, and I think the example from across Bharat as well as across the world that audience have told us today is a stark reminder that while we may have won politically, while we may have induced societal change and constructed our beloved Ram temple, there are multiple fights that continue to exist. It's a stark reminder that this is merely one stop along the way of Hindu Renaissance, and we better gear up. And just a special sort of mention that women who are in this movement have a superior responsibility, as Deep and Shivam have very painfully recounted, that the women finally are the bearers of burden of the conflict. Therefore, that renaissance has to come from many of us young women here in the room. So having said that...
And also I will just add with this Ram temple thing. So this, I think, and this I'm very hopeful about, this will act as a catalyst. This will improve, this will gear up our movements. And I think, especially in this part of Bengal, the West Bengal, which we see, I think he'll fight back.
This time in the Durga Puja, I was in Kolkata, so I went to the Ayodhya Pandal, and it was the busiest Pandal throughout. So there's definitely some hope, leaving this conversation on a positive note. Jai Shri Ram, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, dignitaries. May I request now Mr. Ishwar Shetty, sir, to honor the dignitaries.
I believe that the panelists will be around for a bit. I know some of you could not ask questions, so you can talk to them in the Harate Katte at...
it's an AUDI 3.
AUDI 3,
yes. Audience, please note, by this we end the session for the day. Tomorrow we begin at 10 a.m. with other beautiful topics selected for all of you. Within few minutes, at 6:20, we begin the cultural event of the day, that is musical evening by Sandeep Narayan. It will be in the auditorium, the main auditorium upstairs. So request all of you to please assemble in the auditorium. The show begins at 6:20 p.m.